Hi guys, it's Mrs. Belknap again. I'm here to talk to you about some of Standard 6E. You can take a look at the learning targets here. You by now should have done a worksheet on sectionalism, which helps to explain the differences between the economy of the North and the economy of the South in the first half of the 19th century. And this video is going to tell you about the compromises that were used to reduce the tensions between the two sections of the country. So to reduce the tensions between the North and the South. While you're listening and watching the video, you're going to be creating a map to demonstrate the attempted compromises over those Western territories. And this also gets into how debates over the institution of slavery increased the tensions between the two regions. So here we go. All right, something really important to understand about these compromises is that as new territories were entering the Union, people would move into the territories and then want their territory to become a state. As new states entered the Union or the United States, compromises were reached that maintained the balance of power in the Senate between free and slave states. So remember from government that every state has 2 senators. So that means that their representation is equal. Rhode Island, which is a teeny tiny state, has 2 senators. Virginia, which is a large state, has 2 senators. So if there's something that Rhode Island wants and Virginia doesn't, Virginia can always vote it down. Okay, so that's what balance of power means. All right, so let's take a look. We have our first map here. You're going to fill in the information from the slide on your own map. Feel free to pause as often as you need to while you are writing down the information. I'm going to explain it so that you have an understanding of what it all means, okay? So, something to remember is that this territory here in the middle was added to the United States with the Louisiana Purchase in 1802. By 1820, the territory of Missouri had enough people that they were ready to become a full state in the Union. They wanted to enter as a slave state. That would upset the balance of power between the free states in the North and the slave states in the South. So they compromised and decided Missouri would become a slave state, and then Maine, which had been part of Massachusetts, which is right there, would enter as a free state. Then things would be equal again. The rest of the Louisiana Territory was divided at the 3630 latitude line. All states north of that line would be free states, meaning there would be no slavery in those states. And then the territories south of that line, slavery would be permitted in any new state south of the 3630 line. In the beginning, this created a relief of tensions. People thought it was a really good thing that we had shown as a country that we could continue to compromise. And other people thought that it was a bad idea because you had now put into law a line that physically divided the country into free states and slave states. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Fast forward 30 years to 1850. In the time between 1820 and 1850, Texas had been annexed in 1845, and then that created a war with Mexico. As a result of the war with Mexico, we got the Southwest Territory here. Then in 1849, gold was found in California. So people rushed from all over the country here to get to California. That's called the gold rush. Because there were so many people in California, they were ready to petition for statehood, but they would be a free state. And if they entered the Union, that would upset the balance of power in the Senate between the free states and the slave states. So a little more complicated compromise was reached. This one has a few more parts to it than the previous one. All right, first, California was admitted as a free state. Then the rest of the Mexican cession was divided into the Utah Territory and the New Mexico Territory. And the people of these territories, according to the idea of popular sovereignty, would decide for themselves whether or not to allow slavery. So we've looked at this word before, popular sovereignty. You see it here on the map legend, and then it's over here for your notes. And remember, popular sovereignty means the people rule. And in this case, in the 1850s, it means the people rule about slavery. So they decide if slavery will be admitted in the territories, not Congress, right? The last two parts of the Compromise of 1850 was that Congress passed a stronger Fugitive Slave Act. A fugitive is anyone who is running away. So in other words, a fugitive was a runaway slave, someone who tried to escape, say, from South Carolina to Ohio. They would have to be returned to South Carolina, and anybody in Ohio that had helped them would be arrested. Okay. And I noticed there's a typo right here. On your sheet, that should say return runaway slaves, not retain. So hopefully that won't cause too much confusion. All right, and then let me let that fade away. But then the last part of it was that slaves could no longer be bought or sold in the District of Columbia. You know, that's DC, the nation's capital, is in the South, technically. Slavery was legal in the capital, but according to the Compromise of 1850, people had to stop buying and selling slaves in the district. Okay? Right, this compromise created more tensions than it relieved. The Fugitive Slave Act especially is going to cause a lot of people in the North to want to resist that law. They're going to want to actually help to end slavery rather than help to return slaves to their plantations. All right, the last one that you need to know is called the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And this came about because a senator from Illinois, there's Illinois right here, wanted a transcontinental railroad, that is a railroad to be built from Illinois to California. And in order to do that, he needed people that would live in this territory. So he proposed this bill called the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and it created the territories of Kansas and Nebraska. And the people in these areas, by the principle of popular sovereignty, would decide for themselves whether or not to allow slavery. Now, remember though, that slavery had already been decided earlier for that territory, that it would be free. So what this means is that Congress has to replace the Missouri Compromise and erase the 3630 line. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act replaced the Missouri Compromise, which had closed the northern part of the Louisiana Territory to slavery. This law is going to create a lot of tension between the North and the South. And what is going to happen is people will move in from Missouri, see Missouri is a slave state, into Kansas. They'll bring their slaves with them. And then people from the North, areas like this, would move into Kansas, and they want to establish a free territory. So they are going to end up fighting and killing each other over this issue of slavery. Okay? All right, that's it on the compromises. Let us know if you have any questions.